I built a treehouse for my kids to enjoy, but the crazy neighbor decided it was a problem. According to her, the branches were getting in the way of her sacred tanning time in the backyard. Now, she wants me to knock down the whole treehouse just because it's getting a bit of shade. Has this woman really gone mad? Stay until the end and don't miss a single detail. Ever since I moved into this neighborhood, I knew I was going to have to deal with some ridiculous HOA rules. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the ego surge that was about to hit my house. It all started because my kids had always dreamed of having a treehouse, and as a father, I wanted to give them this little piece of childhood that, frankly, didn't bother anyone. I spent weeks planning, bought quality wood, asked a carpenter friend to help me, and we made a project that was safe, beautiful, and within the limits of my backyard. My children loved it. They climbed up to play, made up adventure stories, and even slept there some nights in the summer. But apparently, the biggest crime in this neighborhood wasn't theft, vandalism, or drug dealing. It was casting shade on the wrong property. Because that's exactly what this woman claimed when she showed up furiously on my doorstep, holding a clipboard as if she were about to issue a court order. "Your treehouse is shading my yard." For a second, I thought I'd heard wrong. "What? The shadow is falling on my tanning area. I demand that you remove this aberration immediately." I looked at my yard. I looked at the treehouse. I looked up at the sky, trying to figure out if God was testing me. It wasn't possible. Had this woman really crossed the street to complain that my children were impeding her tan? The HOA had made up absurd rules before. They complained when a neighbor painted his door too flashy blue. They said another house couldn't have a garden dwarf because it wasn't aesthetically harmonious. But now I was dealing with something completely new. I tried to argue. I said that the treehouse was in my backyard, that it didn't violate any association rules, and that, frankly, I didn't care about her solar concerns. But this woman wasn't going to take no for an answer, and I already knew it wasn't going to end there. The woman wasn't satisfied with my answer. Of course she wasn't. People like her don't take no for an answer. For them, rules are just an annoying detail that can be ignored when they don't suit their needs. After doing her thing on my doorstep, she stormed out, holding her clipboard like a hammer of justice. I knew it wouldn't end there, and I was right. 2 days later, I received an official notification from the HOA. The white envelope, with that pretentious logo in the corner, gave me a headache before I even opened it. When I finally got the paper out, there it was. Infraction, unapproved construction, elevatable structure, causing light obstruction to neighboring property. In other words, the woman had actually filed a formal complaint because the shade from my tree was getting in the way of her tanning. I'd expected her to try something like that, but to see it in writing, that was something else. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. The HOA didn't have any specific rules against tree houses. I knew that because, when I built, I checked all the neighborhood regulations to avoid problems. But that never stopped these people from inventing new ways to make other people's lives hell. The next day, while I was still thinking about how to respond, I came across a man in my yard. Yes, a stranger, walking across my lawn, holding a clipboard, and taking photos of the treehouse without even knocking on my door. I came out of the house and faced the guy, who barely disguised his surprise at having been caught. He introduced himself as an HOA inspector sent to evaluate my construction. "I hope you have a warrant or some authorization to be in my yard." He stammered a bit and tried to say that he had permission from the association, but I laughed. Permission from a crazy lady is not legal authorization. I told him to leave and said that any further attempts to enter my property without my permission would result in a call to the police. He left quickly, but I knew the war was just beginning. After the inspector's unexpected visit, I knew the woman wouldn't stop until she got what she wanted. These types of people don't accept being contradicted. If they don't get their way, they go for force. And that's exactly what she did. The next morning, when I went out to get the paper, I saw a new piece of paper stuck to my mailbox. Another notice from the HOA. This time, an immediate removal order from the Treehouse. I read every word, and my blood boiled. Unapproved structure must be dismantled within 10 days to avoid daily fines and legal action. So I was now being threatened with fines and lawsuits just because a psycho neighbor wanted to sunbathe? That didn't make any sense. I knew the neighborhood rules. There was no clause against tree houses. Nothing. But this woman wasn't playing fair. She wasn't following the rules. She was inventing new ones. That same afternoon, I went to the HOA headquarters to demand an explanation. If they wanted to remove something from my property, they were going to have to face me first. The office was one of those annoying places where everything smells of stale coffee and bureaucracy. I went straight to the counter and asked to speak to the person in charge. And guess who showed up? Her. The woman herself. With a victorious smile on her face, she sat down on the other side of the table as if she already knew she had won. You received the notification, right? It's just standard procedure. Standard? Since when was removing tree houses because of shade standard? I wanted to explode. I wanted to scream in her face and ask her who she thought she was to dictate what my children could and couldn't have. But no, I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Instead, I put both arms on the table, looked her in the eye, and said with all the calm in the world, "You're going to have to sue me." And at that moment, her expression of victory disappeared, because now she knew I wasn't going to give in. If this woman thought I was just going to comply and dismantle the treehouse just because it couldn't get sun all day, she was sorely mistaken. I knew that people like that didn't expect resistance. They counted on the fear of others, on bureaucracy, and on people's laziness in fighting injustice. But I wasn't going to make it easy. This time, she had picked a fight with the wrong person. I left the HOA office and went straight home. On the way, I already started planning my response. If they wanted war, then I was going to play their game, only better. The first thing I did was look for a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but a specialist in residents' associations who dealt with exactly this kind of abuse of power. I sent him all the documents, explained the situation, and waited for his opinion. The next day, he confirmed what I already suspected. There was no rule against tree houses. This meant that this woman and her little friends from the HOA were simply making up reasons to persecute me. They had no legal basis for the notice they sent me. It was just a dirty little game to pressure me into giving in. But I wasn't going to give in. The second thing I did was take the story to the neighborhood Facebook group. I wrote it all down, detailing how the HOA was trying to force me to tear down a perfectly nice treehouse just because a neighbor thought she had an exclusive right to the sun. I also mentioned that I was now being threatened with fines and possible legal action if I didn't comply. The post exploded within hours. The neighbors were outraged. Comments started pouring in, all outraged by the situation. Some people shared similar stories, saying that this woman had already tried to use the HOA to force other residents to make absurd changes to their homes. Apparently, this wasn't the first time she had abused her power to satisfy her whims. Support was immediate. Neighbors started organizing, saying they were going to sign a petition against the removal of the treehouse. Some even commented that they were going to contact other HOA members to demand explanations. The situation was turning against her, and I was sure she was already realizing it. The HOA had always acted as if it were a supreme entity, a parallel government that could decide even the color of the residents' grass. But now, with the whole neighborhood knowing about the abuse, they were losing control. In the days following my post, the revolt grew. The neighbors were furious, commenting that this woman had crossed the line a long time ago. Before, everyone was afraid to speak out, but now that her dirt had come to light, the stories started to come out. One couple said that she had tried to ban their fence because it didn't fit in with the aesthetics of the neighborhood. Another family said she sent them a formal warning because their car was parked on the street for too long. Even a man who had planted flowers in his yard was warned because the colors weren't harmonious. In other words, it wasn't just me. She did it to everyone, trying to rule the neighborhood like a condominium dictator. And then came the final straw. The HOA members themselves, who had always sided with her before, began to realize that they were now being watched closely. The HOA only works because people accept the rules without question. But now, no one was keeping quiet. Meetings began to fill up. Neighbors demanded explanations. They wanted to know why a treehouse that didn't violate any rules was being threatened with removal. Some even talked about suing the HOA for abuse of power. And that's how, at the end of the week, the infraction notice against my treehouse was cancelled. I received a formal email from the HOA saying that, upon further review, my building was not in violation of any rules and that I could keep it without any problems. No apology, no admission of error. But the victory was mine. And what about the woman who started it all? Well, she's gone. No arrogant looks, no clipboards, no silly new notices in my inbox. The rumors were that she was asked to leave her leadership position in the HOA after the public exposure. In the end, my treehouse remained standing, and she lost what little power she thought she had. Have you ever had to deal with someone like that? The kind of person who thinks they can run everything and make other people's lives hell? Let me know in the comments. And if you liked this video, subscribe to the channel and like it for more stories like this. Want to watch more? Click on the card, and let's marathon. See you in the next video.